welcome to the Millennial Book Junkie. Today I'm going to do something a little different. This channel is usually reserved to all things books, thrillers, horror books that I'm reading, that I want to read, but today I'm actually going to respond to a comment that I got on a few videos ago that asked if I would share how I became a proofreader. I know that being a proofreader sounds like such an awesome job to have if you really like reading and enjoy books. And that's exactly what I thought, and that's why I got into it. And so I want to share with you today a little bit on how I became a proofreader. I will say, though, just to preface, that I am actually a marketing proofreader, so I have not proofread books, which I know. But actually, I will share with you a little bit at the end of this video that I actually am trying to pivot from marketing proofreading to book proofreading and editing. So I'll share with you a little bit about how I'm pivoting at the end of the video. But to start, I will share with you how I am currently a full-time remote proofreader and copy editor, and luckily it is a full-time job that I can do from home, and I really enjoy it. I currently am a copy editor for Nordstrom and Nordstrom Rack, and I've also worked doing proofreading for Calvin Klein as well as Anthem, the healthcare company. But of course I did not start out like that, so I'm going to share with you how I got started. So I guess you could say I got my start by getting a degree in English, but that is not required. I got a degree in English because I wanted to write books, and I thought that was the closest thing to get a degree in to help me write books, even though that degree does not help me write books. But I did get my college degree in English, but you definitely don't need one to be an editor, but that's just what I did. So I got my degree in English, and right out of college, I got a job at an online advertising startup, and I basically started there pretty fresh out of college while I was working at Starbucks and doing all kinds of other stuff. But that was like my first full-time job out of college. It's actually also where I met my husband, so it's very cool. So I was at this job at this online startup doing compliance work. I was doing online advertising compliance. So basically what I would do there is review online ads that were going on the network and categorize them and give them tags and making sure that they weren't spamming. So this was actually kind of like a quality assurance type of role, which is great because that set the table for me to kind of jump into like editing, because editing is very like quality assurance. So right out of college, I was in that job, and I was in that job about 5 or 6 years before I decided that I really wanted to do something else. I really wanted to do something that I enjoyed, and I thought, why don't I become an editor? Also, I was at the time thinking like, can I write a book? Because I've always wanted to write a book, and I thought, no, I absolutely cannot write a book, so I'm gonna be an editor and edit books. So this is the way my mind works. So this was around 2016, 2017, and I decided that I wanted to be an editor. And so if you're just watching this video, you're like, yes, that's where I'm at now. So I got my start by taking classes in proofreading. So obviously I had my full-time job already, so after work or at night and on weekends, I decided I was going to start by taking a course. Because even though I was already reading books and, I already felt pretty well versed in what made sense and I could always spot typos, I was like, I really don't know much about like the specifics of grammar and punctuation. I didn't know all the rules. So I decided to take 2 courses. I took a proofreading course and a copy editing course from Scribendi.com. Now, Scribendi.com is a proofreading and editing service, and at the time, this was 2016, they had courses on editing. So initially, I wanted to be one of their editors, so I thought, why don't I take their courses so I could become one of their editors? So I took their courses, and I found them to be, unfortunately, not very stimulating because they was just all content. It was just like, there was really not much of a learning management system. It was just like you went in and you just read a bunch of content. Luckily, there are a lot of better online courses now for editing, but I wasn't too into these courses that I had initially took, but they did teach me some things that I did not know in terms of grammar and finding flaws within sentences and paragraphs. Sorry, that's my dog. Silly. Shh. So the first thing I did was take courses, but I was really looking forward to getting started. I really just wanted to jump in. So I didn't really wait to complete those courses before I decided I'm just gonna start applying for things. So this was, like I said, back in 2016, late 2016, early 2017. I stumbled upon a website called hiremymom.com. At the time, it was a remote job site for moms who were working from home. And so the goal of the site was to help moms who wanted to work part-time and help give them jobs while they were at home raising their kids. So I stumbled upon this job site. Obviously I wasn't a mom, but it wasn't specifically only for moms. It was just kind of targeted at moms. So it was a job site, and I decided to pay for their monthly service. And at the time it was pretty cheap. It was like $25 for 3 months. And I decided to pay for their service so that I could use their job board and apply for remote jobs. Being remote was like super important to me. Even back in like 2016, 2017, I had already worked an office job for about 5 years at that point, and I was like, I am so ready to work from home. So the fact that I could apply for remote jobs on Hire My Mom got me very excited. So at this point, like I said, I didn't have any experience, no editing experience whatsoever. I just felt like I could edit, and I had the English degree, so I was like, I'm gonna try and leverage that. And I also had experience like in my job, looking at ads and finding flaws. So I was like, I'm just gonna put all this together and try and make it work. So it took me about 2 months of applying to a bunch of stuff on Hire My Mom. And Hire My Mom at the time was not a huge site. So there was only like 3 or 4 new job postings a day. So every day I would go and apply for gigs on hiremymom.com. And eventually I wrote a convincing enough cover letter and resume to have someone want to hire me. So I started working with a woman named Kelly, and she was my very, very first client, and she needed help with editing her emails that she was sending out in her business and some of her blog posts. And so we had a quick call. She decided, yes, let's move forward. At the time I was just starting out, so my rate at the time was like $18 an hour because I didn't really have much experience. I would say if you're just starting out now, $21 an hour is pretty good, because $18 an hour doesn't go as far as it did back then, even though it didn't really go that far back then either. But I would say if you're just starting out, $21 an hour I would recommend. But at the time, I was at $18 an hour. And so I got my very first gig. I don't know how I did it to this day, but somehow I think I just really wrote something very convincing. But it was a great gig. So I still had my full-time job, and I was really excited to work with Kelly and help her edit her emails. So I did that for a few weeks, and then I used that first gig as leverage to apply to more gigs. So same thing on Hire My Mom. Every day I would just apply, send cover letters, and eventually, after maybe a couple more months, I got 2 really, really important gigs. And I call them important because they were the gigs that really gave me the most of my experience as an editor. One was for a funnel service company, and it was editing landing pages and emails and a lot of marketing content and blog posts. And then another one was with an actual marketing agency. And initially they were just looking for a proofreader for their blog posts that they were writing for their clients. But then they ended up keeping me for years, and I did so much for them. And that was kind of like where I got the bulk of my experience. I will say, when I went into deciding to become an editor, I did not say to myself, I want to become a marketing editor. That wasn't really the plan. I just kind of fell into whoever would hire me. So it ended up being marketing, proofreading, and editing. So I was really excited about that. So I want to say from 2017 to 2019, I had a bunch of side gigs proofreading. I still had my full-time job, but I was thinking I wanted to start my own proofreading business. I was really hoping that I could grow my client base enough to where it would sustain me for full-time living. And unfortunately, by the time 2019 hit, I had been doing this for a couple of years. I was getting really frustrated at my full-time job, and I really wanted to move on and proofread full-time, but my business was not growing fast enough. I had started a website, I had written blog posts, I was really trying to get more clients, but it was really hard because I had to work full-time. So at the time I decided I'm actually gonna put my proofreading business on hold and I'm just gonna try and apply for a proofreading job full time. So instead of trying to grow with like 8 different clients, by the way, a lot of those clients I got on hiremymom.com just from getting experience and moving forward, and then I ended up getting more, and then eventually people were referring me, but it wasn't enough. So I decided I really want to get out of my full-time job. Maybe I will just get a full-time proofreading job. Easier said than done, by the way. So I want to say it was early on in 2019. It might have been like February, March of 2019. And I decided to start applying to full-time jobs. And it took some time because I didn't really find anything until August of 2019. So at the time I was using Google to find jobs. I would literally search remote proofreading jobs in Google and then apply to all those jobs that Google would list. I even had Google job alerts set up so that every day in my email I would get Google job alerts for remote proofreading jobs. And that was really important to me. Like I said before, I really wanted to work from home. It was like the dream for me at the time. And so I had been applying to jobs that would come up in Google job alerts. And one day I applied for a job that was with Kelly Services. And Kelly Services is a contracts agency to where like they're the ones that are finding jobs for like the bigger clients. So the job was posted by Kelly Services, but it was for a bigger company. And so I didn't really understand how recruiters and all that worked at the time. So I applied for a job on Google job alerts that I had found, and it was by Kelly Services, and they said that they needed a full-time temporary proofreader for a healthcare company. And I was like, okay, I don't know what this is, but it sounds good, so I'm just gonna go ahead and apply. I will say one thing too, if you're kind of in the beginning of trying to become a proofreader, I did also find one gig through the Editorial Freelancers Association. So if you want to go ahead and go to the Editorial Freelancers Association website, they have all the information. I joined there for a year. They do send, or they used to, email job alerts for clients who are looking for editors. So that's also a really good way to find work, but it's very competitive because I had it for a year and I only found one gig, but that's also an option. Okay, so back to the present. It's August of 2019 and I applied to this Kelly Services job, and no joke, right after I submitted my resume, I want to say like 5 minutes went by and I got this email from Kelly Services that asked me if I was available for a call. And I was like, oh my gosh, somebody responded, because if you've been applying for jobs, you know that nobody really responds. And so I immediately was like, yes, I'm free for a call right this second. And so she called me and she told me that she really liked my resume because it had a bunch of proofreader roles listed, because I had built up a lot of good experience with these like side clients for a couple years. And she said that she wanted to submit me as a candidate for this proofreading role. And then she told me that the company that was requesting a proofreader was Anthem. And I was like, oh my God, Anthem? Like, that's one of the biggest health insurance companies ever. And I was just like floored, because I was like, I was just looking for a full-time job. I wasn't looking for a cool full-time job, So I was floored and I was really nervous because we moved through the interview process, and I had never interviewed for a real proofreading job before, and it was really, really actually not that bad. And I went through the process and I held my breath because it was a full-time role. Even though it was temporary, I was planning on quitting my full-time job if I had got this Anthem role. So lo and behold, a couple weeks going through the interview process and all that stuff, they called and said they wanted to hire me. And I was just so happy because I had worked for the online advertising company since I got out of college. And it was like, at that point, I think it was probably about 9 years that I had been at that company. And so it was just so cool to be going out and doing this thing that I really wanted to do, and it was new, and it was also completely remote. So it was full-time remote. Now, granted, it wasn't like full-time salary amazing, but it was a start. And so I put in my 2 weeks at my full-time job, which was very scary because I had been there for 9 years. and I got the job at Anthem, and so they had me there for about 3 months, and that was where I really learned how to be a professional proofreader, because I was in the government business division. We were proofreading marketing materials for Medicare and Medicaid members, and I learned a lot from the other proofreader there who was just amazing at her job, and I worked with writers and project managers, and I had calls, and it was just a completely different experience from my prior job, and it was just very professional, and I felt so good. I had kind of felt like I had found my place in life because I had a professional job that I actually, number one, I felt was good at, but also that I really liked. So this was like winning the life lottery for me and the fulfillment lottery, because I had really found something that I really enjoyed. The sad part was that it was ending in December. So even though I was so thrilled to be there, I knew in the back of my mind that it was not going to last, and I had to find something else. So before my contract was up, I started looking for other proofreading jobs on flexjobs.com. That's another remote website, or another website where you can find a remote job. And there's, of course, a monthly fee. I think it's about $15 a month, but they only list remote jobs. So I signed up with FlexJobs and I applied a bunch, and I was really getting nowhere, but I started early because I knew Anthem was, gonna end soon. But eventually I was lucky enough to find something in very early December, like literally probably 3 weeks before Anthem was gonna let me go. I had heard back from another healthcare company that I had applied for, Cardinal Health. And Cardinal Health needed proofreaders for package proofreading because they were a pharmaceutical company that needed their packages rebranded. So we had to basically proofread a lot of packaging material for medical supply. So this company had gotten back to me from FlexJobs, and luckily I was able to get the role. This was another full-time proofreading role, but it was a contract role, meaning of course they're not offering insurance, but sometimes the recruiter company did offer insurance, which Cardinal Health's recruiting company, I believe it was Sella at the time, they offered health insurance. So I was able to get health insurance while still just being a contract worker. And Cardinal Health hired me as a contract worker, and it was temporary, and I started that role in December of 2019. Fast forward to March of 2020, which we all know what happened in March of 2020, COVID, and so I was working at Cardinal Health, but for some crazy reason, by some stroke of luck, Anthem actually had emailed me after I had left, and they asked if I wanted to come back as a full-time salaried proofreader. Now, this Cardinal Health role was fine. The only thing was it started at 5 in the morning, so that was a little bit grueling, but it was nice to get off at 3 in the afternoon. But it was a hard job because I really had to get up early, and it was fine, but it wasn't as, shall we say, comfortable as I had been at Anthem. So I really did enjoy that job, but that one was also temporary. So, I think it was a 6-month role. So I knew that I would have to find something. So when Anthem came knocking, in March of 2020, I was like so thankful because I didn't have to now try and find something. Now I had a full-time job with benefits, and I was just like, where is this luck coming from? Now, what happened to my side gigs when I got all these full-time roles? I basically dropped them one by one because it was just too much work to be proofreading all day for a company and then go home after that. I was working from home, but after work, do more proofreading. Especially, I really didn't feel like I needed to do that because I had already landed the full-time proofreading role, so I didn't really need to try and continue to grow this proofreading business on the side. So 2 years go by at Anthem. So I was at Anthem from March of 2020 to December of 2022. So I really, really loved working at Anthem. I really, really enjoyed being part of that team, and I was so grateful. But after a couple years, I started to get anxious about starting my own business again. I've got this kind of bug in me. I don't know what it is, but I'm always trying to avoid full-time work and just work for myself somehow. I'm still dreaming of the day when I can just read all day and never work, but of course we still have to work to make a living. So I was feeling a little antsy and I really wanted to go back to working for clients and just see if I could make this proofreading freelance business work. So as you can imagine, it was tough because I had let go of all those clients in favor of working full-time at Anthem. So towards the end of 2022, though, I decided to strike out on my own and just be a freelance proofreader and see where it would lead me. I had saved up some money, so I was like, I think I can do this. Well, I would recommend that if you think you can do freelancing, it's really important, of course, to save up money, but I would also have a business plan and a plan of attack for finding clients. I knew where I could find clients, but I did not know if it was going to be a tested method. So when I left Anthem at the end of 2022, actually, I think it was, I have my dates wrong. It was the end of 2021. So I started freelancing on my own in 2022. And so the whole year of 2022, I was doing freelance proofreading. And I found the majority of my work through Upwork this time. So that's another job board for, finding contract work. And it took me a couple months to find my first client. That seems to be a trend on Upwork, but eventually I did it. I also revamped my whole LinkedIn and I took courses on how to do that. But I found a lot of really good clients on Upwork, and that work really sustained me throughout 2022. But I also reached out to some of my old clients and asked if I could continue working with them, and a lot of them said yes. And then some of them even referred me to other people. So while 2022 was great because I was able to work for myself and I was able to bring in some kind of living, it was not enough. It was nowhere near enough. I was relying on credit cards. The money that I was making as a freelance proofreader was paying my bills, but that was about it. So while it was a fun try and I don't regret it, I was not fully prepared to be a solo freelance proofreader. I really enjoyed it, but it was a lot of tough lessons learned. So at the end of 2022, I got engaged and I decided that I should go back to some full-time proofreading work. And I didn't want to because I really was enjoying the freelance lifestyle as a proofreader, but it was not sustainable. Whatever I was doing wasn't working, and I really, really needed to start generating more income. And on top of that, I was paying for benefits and it was just very, very expensive. So I decided to start applying again. And it was really funny because I decided to do this at 3 a.m. I went to sleep a few nights after I got engaged, and I woke up at 3 a.m. and I was like, I need to find a job. And I went to my computer, I turned on LinkedIn, and the first job that appeared when I searched for copy editor or proofreader on LinkedIn jobs was a job at Nordstrom, and it was a copy editing role at Nordstrom. And it was a flex copy editing role, which again, I'm kind of like in this contract role pool of jobs. And so I applied for it and I felt really good about it, and I went to sleep. And all that week I was applying for copy editing jobs because I knew that I needed to have a full-time job again. And no one got back to me except for Nordstrom. And I was thrilled because I was just really in need of some full-time work. And even if it was kind of like this contract flex role, I was really excited just to work with such a wonderful brand that I've always grown up loving. And so I jumped at this opportunity to work at Nordstrom, and I have been there ever since. That was in February of 2023. So after I got engaged, I heard back from Nordstrom in December of 2022, but it was the holidays, so it took a long time to finally go through the interviews and get hired. But I was just overjoyed that I got that full-time role at Nordstrom, and I'm currently doing a lot of editing and proofreading for Nordstrom Rack because they didn't really have a full-time proofreader there, so that's kind of where I've been ever since, and I absolutely love it. Now, I also have done proofreading for Calvin Klein on the side. I don't know what it is that, like, on my LinkedIn, because I revamped it like a few years ago, I am constantly being hit up by recruiters who are like, hey, I think you'd be great for this proofreading role, and I'm always open to like hearing about it. And so, you know, through other opportunities, I've had the opportunity to work with Calvin Klein and do some package proofreading. So that was really cool too. And so currently I'm just really, I feel very fulfilled in the work that I'm doing, because it may not be, you know, book editing, which is kind of what I wanted initially, but it's really fun copy, you know, like it's mostly marketing for Nordstrom Rack, and it's just fun. I mean, think about it, clothes, emails, paid media. It's a lot of really fun copy to proofread. So technically I am reading for a living. I'm not reading books just yet, but I am reading for a living, and it's a lot of fun. Now I will tell you that I'm starting to feel antsy again, and not to start a proofreading business, but to go to book editing. I'm feeling really called to do book editing, because that's kind of initially where I had started. So the only problem was I am an absolute beginner at book editing. I mean, I'm a pro at book reading, but I definitely am not a pro at book editing. I'm sure I could get by proofreading a book, because that's mostly just finding grammar and typo errors, but I've never actually copy edited a book. So I'm actually taking a course, which is the first thing I do anytime I have this idea of a new thing that I want to do. I first take a course so that I could feel somewhat capable of doing the job. So I'm actually taking a copy editing course at UCLA Extension, and it's geared specifically towards copy editing books. And I'm a few weeks into it, and I am just loving it, because I'm learning about writing books, and that is really what I want to do. I'm currently writing my own book, and so the fact that I could potentially one day copy edit or proofread books for a living is just like so cool. So that's the path I'm currently on. But like I said, I'm really enjoying working for Nordstrom, and I really enjoy marketing copy. It's fun. It's just fun. So I'm really enjoying my full-time work, but I am pivoting more towards book editing. So we'll see how that flourishes over the next few months or year. I would love to, you know, start out even working for like a small publisher you know, doing some books and stuff. So I just think that would be so fun. So yeah, that was really my whole journey, how I became a proofreader. And I'm sure if you're just starting out, you probably have a ton of questions. So feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'm happy to respond. I'll also post some links to the job boards that I've gone to and had success with over the years. And if anything, please just let me know if you have any other questions, or if you're hoping to be a proofreader too. I'd love to hear your story, so just let me know. And if you like bookish content, feel free to like and subscribe, because that's what this channel mainly is about. But yeah, I really appreciate you stopping by and watching this video. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.